right off the bat, I'm a producer and a filmmaker, and I'm coming at this not as a biologist, as a computer scientist. So really, producers, we know a lot about, we have very perfunctory knowledge about a lot of things, but none of it is deep, right? It is really exciting for me too, as a topic, as a human, from a human perspective. And I would say it all started, well, it didn't really all start, but where I really got in touch with my wildling is during COVID. I live in Miami, and in Florida, we were, for better or for worse, allowed to be outside. And I'm also lucky that we have a beach house in northern Florida. So when COVID happened, I was able to be outside a lot. As a programmer and also as a nonprofit leader in the media industry, I have to put a lot of headsets on. So, now Apple, but Meta, and basically I'm in technology all the time. When I'm programming, when I'm creating. So when COVID happened and everybody just kind of like zoomed into Zoom, I went the other way. I went kind of wild. So I started taking really long walks with my dog in these national parks that are up there, and losing myself in nature. And I'm an empath. So by saying this, I feel really bad for saying this, but I actually physically and mentally thrived when a lot of people were suffering. And I'm sure you've heard it from other people. And I thought about it. I was like, why was I thriving in this scenario where I shouldn't have been thriving? Is because I was rewilding, and because I was starting to get in touch with nature, where I'm always in technology, right? So this is where this topic is coming from. Who here is a sci-fi geek? Like writes to read sci-fi? Okay, like William Gibson, Neil Stephenson, Margaret Atwood. Okay, me too. So I grew up on the concept of cyberpunk. So because of rapid development of technology and also human greed, we're all gonna die. And now it's getting, like the humans are over, like that's it, and good riddance. I'm not really done with that because I actually do like humans, as flawed as we are. And I don't want us to disappear soon or soonish. So while I was, I'm a sci-fi geek, and I read a lot about sci-fi and watch. Not all the movies are very good, unfortunately. I hear Neuromancer is coming finally, so we'll see how that goes. And I got into the concept of Solarpunk. Do you guys know what that is? Solarpunk? Yeah. Okay. So I would say like Solarpunk is the other side of cyberpunk, where us with nature together harmoniously can build a better future. And it does sound naive, but also why not be naive if this is one way of resolving and going forward. So Solarpunk led me to Rewild, and Rewild could be completely disavowing technology, which I'm not down with because I really love technology, and also I think it could be really helpful in this process. I wanted to look at rewilding as a progressive approach to conservation, and then also as a way for us to bring nature back into our lives. So instead of you disappearing into the wild, I don't have the survival skills, but I would like to bring nature into the city. I was born in a city. I live in cities, so it's I'm not very, very good outside of it. I really love living in a city. So how do you bring nature back into the city? And I'm just going to give like one example of each topics that I tackle. But what I'm really loving at the moment is that big cities are starting to clean the river. So, like cities are always like built around a river or an ocean, a body of water. So now big cities are including New York and the Hudson, are putting a lot of efforts to clean up the river so you can go back swimming in them. How amazing it is to live in a place where you can just jump in the river, right? And that's what Berlin is doing. And I was just reading that Paris wants to open the Seine for swimming for the Paris Olympics. And I think this is fantastic and fabulous. And I would love to live in a city where I can go swimming. And I actually do live in a city where you can go swimming. I live in Miami. So one of the reasons why I've stayed in Miami is because I can wake up, I can jump in the bay or in the ocean, I can go for a swim. Often they're dolphins. I'm not saying that I'm swimming with dolphins every day, but it's incredible to have dolphins and manatees and turtles and all this wildlife, including invasive species, that are around you, right? So, like, living in nature with living nature with nature harmoniously. I really, really like this concept. Why with AI? Not just because it's, everybody wants to put AI in something and it's topical, but it's, I feel that artificial intelligence and large language models are really, really helpful to speed up the process of rewilding and to also prototype it before you implement it into nature, so you don't do catastrophic decisions. I'll give you another example. I grew up in Toronto before Miami. In Toronto, Lake Ontario is one of the most polluted lakes, used to be. A lot of industry around it, right? Buffalo and Toronto, Chicago, the Great Lakes. So the government decided they're going to put mussels in the lake to clean up the water. Well, they destroyed everything. So in that respect, like if you have artificial intelligence and you can prototype things and you can do it fast, maybe you're going to save yourself from this kind of experiences, right? But where I started, or where I think we should start, is by rewilding ourselves first. So, and I've been thinking a lot about working with emerging filmmakers and a lot of my young staff, and I'm seeing a lot of, and I think some of the speakers here specifically address mental health. Either addressed before me or are going to address after me at the panel. But mental health, I feel, is one of the top 10 healthcare issues at the moment in the world, right across. Anxiety, depression. So one way I dealt with it is to rewild myself. So I proposed that why don't we start by embracing our inner wildlings. And how do you do that? Very simple thing is maybe just find a favorite tree and you sit under it and just absorb. And then maybe something that would be even more interesting to you. What helped me is I started reading books by Native American, indigenous, not just Native American, indigenous artists and writers. And there's a lot of really incredible wisdom that we can absorb from them. And one book, if you haven't read it yet, that I think started my journey there, is called Braiding Sweetgrass. And she is a poetess and then also a scientist. And it's just like such a beautiful book. You don't have to read it. You can also listen to it. She narrates it on Audible, audiobook. So you can also listen to it while you take your walks or under a tree. I think reconnecting to indigenous wisdom is really, it's not a new concept, but I think it's really, really important. So starting with read more books, go to galleries of indigenous artists, but then also maybe discover the indigenous tribes or people that are in your region. So for me, what was eye-opening is discovering the tribe of Miccosukee, which is an offshoot of the Seminoles. And the Seminoles were the only tribe that wasn't conquered. And there was a directive from the United States government that they have to be extinct, completely extinct, which is insane, right? And the fact that they survived is that they went into the Everglades, which is swamp country, and were able to survive in this environment that a lot of developers couldn't get through, and a lot of people that were like trying to run rail tracks or farmers wanted to get into the Everglades, and it was just too scary. Too many alligators, too many snakes, too many bugs, too hot, too humid. But the Miccosukee and the Seminoles, especially the Miccosukee, went in and inhabited these islands and it's not a swamp, it's really a running river, like it's a slow running river of grass, as we call it. But they inhabited these beautiful islands and they made them their own, and they started building houses that are called chikis. And were able to survive in this environment by creating architecture that was, first, it gave it like a natural aeration. It was also on stilts, which means right now we are exposed to rising sea levels. So if a hurricane hits, it's not the hurricane, it's usually the water rise that comes after that will the surge, exactly like Katrina. So they were able to combat that through their architecture. And now it's being adapted in Miami in a lot of the ritzy houses or even the Perez Art Museum. So how do you use this Native American wisdom back into it? So I would give you one of the call of actions is please, explore your native wisdom in where you live. And if there aren't, if it's hard to get to, at least read a book or try to meet indigenous artists. And then like the wildest thing that I just read, I don't know why, I guess I didn't realize this was happening. It started in September, but did you read that now the most remote Brazilian native tribes are through Starlink on the internet? Did you? Yeah. So apparently there's like these tribes out in the Brazilian, like nobody has ever been able to get to them. Now are on the internet because of Starlink, and whatever, it comes with all this stuff, right? Like, they are addicted to porn, for example, right? Like it's, so, but I was thinking, okay, well, there's that, right? Like this is all these negatives, but me being me, and as I said, like I'm a bit naive, and that's served me well. What is the silver lining? Maybe there's a way for us to reach out to these incredible tribes that, I don't know how I would have found them other way. So that might sound incredibly naive, but I think it's really interesting that now we are all connected. If they're connected, now we're all connected, right? So I think it's interesting to think about. So how is artificial intelligence used in conservation at the moment? So apparently AI is one of the top 3 technologies for conservation, which I think is really cool. So, like we hear the dooms models, but isn't it great that also there's some positives? And for example, in Africa, because animals are being killed by poachers, right? And animals are becoming extinct, but also there are skirmishes between farmers in Africa and, let's say, elephants, right? So like between big game where like the elephants will trample their farm fields, and then it becomes a feud, and then elephants die. So now the government has put in these cameras with different organizations where they get triggered if a poacher passes through, hidden cameras, or let's say like an animal, like a herd of elephants passes through. So in real time, AI is analyzing the data, and it's all the time. So it's covering a lot more ground, and you don't have that much human capacity to be able to cover all this ground. And then also it's analyzing it in real time, which means you can have like a really fast reaction. So that should save animals from extinction. So I think that's a really cool example. AI and gamification. I like, I'm not a gamer, but I am, I'm a gamer to a point, but really not, full as much as I would like to be. But what I really like about the idea of gamification is, as I was saying, and rewilding, is that AI could be used to create these systems and to test them before you actually implement them in the real world. I have a real world example. I was filming in Haiti 7 years ago, and we were working with a nun, like a badass bitch. Like seriously, like this woman was 75 years old. She decided she's gonna leave Paris and she's gonna go back to her community. As you probably know, Haiti's infrastructure is not there, and it's falling apart. So the communities are figuring out different ways in order to save their people, like to take care of their people. So she went back, left Paris, went back to help her community. And then the UN at the time was still there. So the UN invited her to gamify how she would imagine her community be better. So what they gave her is basically Minecraft. And they said, this is a 75-year-old woman. And they told her, hey, here's learn Minecraft and start imagining where would you put the wells? Because there's no running water, right? Or the infrastructure is falling apart. So where would you put a well for fresh water? Where would you put solar panel systems? And they gave that to community leaders, and they started kind of reimagining and what their community would look like, and prototyping it on Minecraft before it was implemented. And I thought that was amazing. So I wanted to give that as an example of the possibilities. And I give you a challenge to start with rewilding yourself right now.